understand the prayers we have, Madana Mohan deity is for Sambandha Gyan, and Govinda is for Avideya. So Sambandha Gyan is the one who gives you the relationship with Krishna, and Avideya or Govinda is the one who engages you in your bhakti or your devotional service. There is no difference between the shelter-giving Supreme Lord and the initiating and instructing spiritual masters. If one foolishly discriminates between them, he commits no offense in the discharge of devotional service. So therefore, we have to treat Siksha and Diksha Guru equally. And again, they're almost like the Supreme Lord, so we have to respect them like we respect Krishna himself. The spiritual master who first gives information about spiritual life is called the Vatma Pradarshaka Guru. The spiritual master who initiates according to the regulations of Shastra is called the Diksha Guru. And the spiritual master who gives instructions for elevation is called the Siksha Guru. So this looks very straightforward. Of course, now we got another guru here called the Vatma Pradarshaka Guru, which literally means that guru who shows the path. So he introduces you to Krishna consciousness. And technically, he's also a Siksha Guru of sorts. There are two kinds of instructing spiritual masters, the Siksha Guru. One is the liberated person fully absorbed in meditation, devotional service. The other is one who invokes the disciple's spiritual consciousness by means of relevant instructions. So the Siksha Gurus could be either a very elevated person who's in bhava or prema, or one who is less than that, but he's giving you proper instructions. The Vatma Pradarshaka Guru, or the Vatma Pradarshaka Guru, means the guru or spiritual master who shows the way. Such a guru is sometimes called Siksha Guru. Although Narada Muni is a Diksha Guru, initiating spiritual master, Suniti, this is Dhruva's mother, was the first who gave him instruction on how to achieve the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Dhruva was asking, well, what am I supposed to do? Because my father's kicked me out of the, he's not respecting me, and he favors his other son by the other mother. What am I supposed to do? His mother said, well, it's hopeless. Your father's not going to listen to me. So he says, go to the forest and worship Vishnu. So that was his first instruction, spiritual instruction. So Suniti therefore became this Vatma Pradarshaka Guru or Vatma Pradarshaka Guru because she told him to go to the forest. It is the duty of the Siksha Guru or Diksha Guru to instruct the disciple in the right way, and it depends on the disciple to execute the process according to Shastra conjunctions. There's no difference between Siksha Guru and Diksha Guru, and generally the Siksha Guru later on becomes the Diksha Guru. So we got Siksha and Diksha Guru, and they both are giving spiritual instructions and guiding the disciple. Still, we do have to get a little more precise definition of the difference, particularly of the Diksha Guru. So in Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami also talks about the gurus. One who accepts the guru who teaches, the Siksha Guru, the method of worship or bhajana vidi, who was previously the Sravana Guru, which means one you hear from, since one has already obtained such a qualified person in the form of a Sravana Guru. If one has many Sravana Gurus, among them one may accept one of them as a Siksha Guru, to whom one has great attraction. So we may have many people we hear from, and then one becomes particularly attractive to, so who become the Siksha Guru. Similarly, selecting a person to whom one is attached, a person takes only one person as a mantra guru or the Diksha Guru, since many mantra gurus is forbidden. So you can only take one mantra guru or Diksha Guru. The Sravana Guru, from whom one gets faith, either of Vichar or Ruchi, and the Bhajana Siksha Guru, from whom one learns worship, are generally the same person. So, this is containing, okay, these are just, so we have many verses which praise gurus, and we often use them to support the idea we should respect guru, but we always assume that it means Diksha Guru. But actually, most of these injunctions are about Shiksha gurus. So here's something from the Mundaka Upanishad. The Brahmana, seeing the planets attained by karmas and becoming indifferent to them, understanding that the eternal Lord cannot be attained by karmas, with 5 words in his hands, approaches the guru, fixed in Brahman and skillful in scriptures in order to know Brahman. So this Tadvigyan Artam Sa Gurum Eva Bigachet. Prabhupada often quotes this, you must approach a guru. But it doesn't necessarily mean a Diksha guru. And in the context of the whole story here, he's actually a Shiksha guru. He's not a Diksha guru. He's just giving teachings. So here's another verse from Mundaka Upanishad. The guru will teach Brahma Vidya in truth to the student who has completely surrendered, who has controlled his mind and controlled his senses. By that knowledge, he will know the eternal and indestructible Lord. So he's giving teachings here. So he's a Shiksha guru. Here's another famous one from Svetasvatara Upanishad. Yasya Devi Parabhakti Yata Devi Tata Guru. Very famous one, also quoted. To the great soul who has great faith, great bhakti for the Lord and Guru, the meaning of what was spoken is revealed. So this is again Shiksha guru. He's not a Diksha guru actually, but you have the idea is you have to give great respect. So you're giving great respect to the Guru like you give to the Supreme Lord. But it's actually for the Shiksha guru here in this case. Another famous one that's often quoted, Acharya Van Purusho Veda. A person who has an Acharya or a Guru knows that the Lord is here. So it's through the Guru that you get Lord. But again, Shiksha rather than Diksha. We got a verse here from the Bhagavatam. Talks about Sakshat Bhagavati, that he is like directly the Supreme Lord, so to speak. The spiritual master should be considered to be directly the Supreme Lord because he gives transcendental knowledge for enlightenment. Consequently, for one who maintains the material conception, the spiritual master is an ordinary human being. Everything is frustrated. His enlightenment and his Vedic studies and knowledge are like bathing of an elephant. So again, you have to give respect to the spiritual master. But actually, this instruction, if we look at the context, is for a brahmachari when he's in the Gurukul. So again, he's the ashram teacher is the Shiksha guru. Another famous verse. One should know the Acharya to be myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, think him an ordinary man, for he's a representative of all the demigods. So here, the instructions is given how a brahmachari should act under the care of a spiritual master in the Gurukul. So again, this is not the Diksha guru, this is a Shiksha guru. And this is not actually concerning a Vaishnava guru. So Jiva Goswami says, those practicing karma or varnashram system where they have varnas and ashramas, etc., should see the guru as the Lord. So it's not even particularly a Vaishnava thing. If you have any guru, any sort in the Vedic system, you see that Shiksha guru as Supreme Lord. So we've seen all these different statements, and as I see, the majority of them are actually about Shiksha gurus giving respect like Supreme Lord, but we're supposed to respect Diksha guru and Shiksha guru equally, basically, like the Supreme Lord. So now, what is the difference between the Shiksha guru and the Diksha guru? As I said, it's a little confusing because usually we use these quotations about Shiksha for Diksha. We assume it means Diksha. So there's a little bit of confusion, the difference between them. So in the scriptures themselves, not in how we speak in ISKCON about Guru or a Diksha or whatever, but if we go to the scriptures, Diksha has a very particular meaning, a very limited meaning actually, Diksha, Diksha Guru. So that, of course, is defined by that verse here, which is quoted in Nectar of Instruction. It's actually from Padma Purana, I believe, and it's quoted in the Bhakti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami. So this talks about Divya Gyanam, or getting transcendental knowledge, and destruction of sin, Kuriya Papasya Sankshayam. And therefore, it is called Diksha. So Diksha means you get transcendental knowledge, you get destruction of sin. So then we will say, well, that's very good because I have to take Diksha, then I will get transcendental knowledge and restore my sins. And if I just get a Siksha guru, he's not going to do that. That's kind of the assumption. But actually, it isn't. It's not true. So then there's another verse after this, Atogurum, Pranamyevam, Sarvas Swam Vinavidya Cha Griniyat Vaishnava Mantra Diksha Purva Vidanataha. So this actually defines the specific nature of Diksha. Not that it's the only process by which you get transcendental knowledge and destroy your sins, but here it says, Griniyat Vaishnava Mantra. You should accept the Vaishnav mantra according to the rules of Diksha. So this is explained by Jiva Goswami. Of course, this is the literal translation. Diksha is so called by the wise because it bestows Divya Jnana, attaining Krishna, and destroys sin. So if we analyze this carefully, why he actually chooses those particular words is because he's analyzing the word Diksha into syllables, and Di and Cha. So Div for Divya Jnana and Cha for Chaya, which means destruction. So destruction of sin, and Divya Jnana. So therefore Diksha. Just as we have Mamsa, it means meat, it means mom and sa, me and he. I kill him, he kills me. That means you get karma when you eat meat. So you take a word and you analyze it by syllables, and then we get a different meaning out of it. So therefore, Diksha means get transcendental knowledge, destroy sin. But then the second verse says, one should offer respects to Guru, offer him everything, and accept Vaishnava mantra according to the rules for taking Diksha. So then Jiva Goswami says, what is this Divya Jnanam? Divya Jnana means knowledge of the form of the Lord and knowledge of one's particular relationship with the Lord. But then he says, in the sacred mantra. So the Diksha Guru gives you the Vaishnava mantra, and that mantra will have the identity of the Lord you're supposed to worship in it, like Krishna or Rama or Nrsimha or whatever, Vishnu, Vasudeva, Narayana, or whatever. That's your Diksha mantra. So that gives you the form of the Lord and one's particular relationship. Then we have words like Namaha, Swaha. So we're the servant, we offer respects to the Lord. So we establish our relationship as servant of the Lord through mantra, the sacred mantra. So therefore, the Diksha Guru is the one who gives a mantra with the name of the Lord, by which we get the Divya Jnanam. And then when we get the Divya Jnanam and we worship the Lord, then we destroy our sin. So that's what it means. So it's a process of destroying sin and getting transcendental knowledge and getting prema through Pancharatric mantra. That's what Diksha is, Pancharatric mantra. Okay? So that the whole process of getting that mantra is a process called Diksha. And then you use that mantra for deity worship. So when you do deity worship, you have to utter that mantra. When you offer incense or lamps or flowers, you have to utter that mantra. So that's the main purpose. The other purpose, of course, is you can just chant that mantra to yourself and meditate on Supreme Lord. That was the case of Gopal Kumar and Riyad Bhagavatamrita. He got this mantra from a guru. I didn't know the meaning or anything. He just chanted this mantra and kept chanting this mantra. And then eventually he started losing his attraction for material things. And he started getting some, idea, I want to meet Krishna through that. So you can use it for that purpose also. But it is the Pancharatric, and the Pancharatric mantras generally are secret. So you cannot reveal the mantra to anybody else. So you have to chant it silently, that mantra. Yeah. So this is quite different from Hare Krishna mantra, which is technically Nama, which is not secret. Doesn't require Diksha. Everybody can hear it, everybody can chant it. This mantra is only given by the Guru when he thinks you're qualified. So it's quite limited in who it's given to, and it's secret. So it's not kirtan mantra, in other words. Yeah? So this is actually what the Diksha is, getting that mantra for deity worship, which reveals the identity of the Lord. In our case, it's Gender Krishna Lord Chaitanya. Yeah? And we establish our relationship. We're the servant of the Lord. So that's Divya Gyanam. Yeah? So we could say, well, actually, we chant Hare Krishna more than we chant these mantras. So why we have to take Diksha at all? So Jiva Goswami says, well, it's for rich householders who can do deity worship and spend their money on their deities. That's why they get good use for their money, because they're serving the Lord with their money. And they get the mantra and they worship the deity. So it's good for rich householders. So that's what he says Diksha is for. So we have that process called the Pancharatric Marga. And of course, one of our main angas is worship of the deity with great affection, and one of the 5 principal angas. But we also have the other angas of hearing, association, Nam Sankirtan, living in the Holy Dham. And now of those, Lord Chaitanya has said the main element is Nam Sankirtan, which does not require Diksha. So then we say, why we take Diksha at all? So one answer is, of course, because we also do deity worship. For the deity worship, then we have to take the mantra, the Diksha. So it's necessary for Pancharatrika Marga, not necessary for chanting the holy name, which is called Bhagavata Marga. But we do it both together. So it's there, but it's secondary actually to chanting Hare Krishna. So there are, because we have many Pancharatric scriptures, there are in those Pancharatric scriptures, they will say that you have to take Diksha. If you don't take Diksha, your life is lost, whatever like that. Of course, we have many statements for so many different things like that. In any particular type of bhakti, you'll find so many statements. You have to do this or else your life is finished, whatever like that. So similarly for Diksha, just as a Brahman who has not taken the thread are not qualified for studying the Vedas or other duties and gain qualification for receiving the thread, those who have not taken Diksha are not qualified for uttering the mantra or worshiping the deity. Therefore, one should undergo Diksha and be praised by Shiva. That's for Hari Bhakti Vilasa. You have to take Diksha. But it's you have to take Diksha because you have to do deity worship. So most of the Vaishnava Sampradayas before Lord Chaitanya were largely deity worship oriented. That was the main process. You do deity worship and then you realize the Lord. They didn't have Nam Sankirtan as the main element. So only with Lord Chaitanya that we get Nam Sankirtan and Bhagavata Marga replacing Pancharatrika Marga. But all these quotations about the necessity of Diksha come from these scriptures concerning Pancharatra. So we can always see you have to take Diksha, you have to take Diksha, but it's actually for deity worship. Unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, all his devotional activities are useless. A person who's not properly initiated can descend again into the animal species. So you can quote that and you get frightened, and then you say, I have to take Diksha. But if we look closely in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, what does he do? He says, Harinama Eva Kevalam, which does not require Diksha. So it's like contrary. Why the contradiction is there? Because these verses from scripture are quoting from Pancharatra, when Nam Sankirtan was not the prevalent mode of advancement in devotional service. So therefore, these statements are there, but we should not take them out of place and think, therefore, this is more important than chanting Hare Krishna. So the Diksha is there, and you get the mantra as your main process of spiritual development. So it's a little bit different from Nam Sankirtan, the process of Diksha. So what we have here is we have the Diksha process by which you get a deity mantra with Krishna as the subject, but it's secret, and you chant that to yourself 3 times a day, maybe for 10 minutes or something. And then we have Siksha with the teachings, etc. And then we have chanting the holy name, which we do maybe hour or 2 hours a day. So it's got much greater prominence for us in terms of helping us spiritually advance. And of course, it's the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But we do have the Diksha process also, but that's particularly for deity worship. So therefore, that's the particular function of the Diksha Guru, to give those Diksha mantra, which means actually it's a second initiation. We call it second initiation. And its purpose is that for deity worship, ultimately, according to scriptural definition. So The Diksha Guru can also give you teaching, so he can also give Siksha. Usually they do. Sometimes they don't, as in the case of Gopa Kumar. The Guru was going to teach him, but suddenly he fainted. He couldn't do anything, and then he disappeared and walked away. And you didn't see him for many years. I think it's met him in Puri again. So he hardly gave any teachings to him at all. So he was just left with his mantra, chanting his mantras like that. Later on, Narada Muni gave him teachings. But, so there was a Siksha Guru. We get the deity mantra, and then that Diksha Guru may also give teachings, particularly about deity worship and things like that. So yes, Diksha was very important, where the main one of the main items of bhakti was deity worship, but if so in many sampradayas. So to do the archana or the deity worship, you need the Diksha. And so previous to Lord Chaitanya, archana was the main process, and therefore there was a great emphasis on the Diksha and the Diksha lines. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made Nam Sankirtan the main process, and thus automatically archana and Diksha become less important. Now we don't discard them, because, as I said, archana is also an anga of bhakti, and it's quite an important one. And we do see even the Goswamis had deities, and so a deity worship is continued in our sampradaya. And of course, then the process of Diksha must also go along with that. But it's not the main element of our spiritual advancement. It is the chanting of the holy name, which does not require the Diksha Guru. There is still some emphasis on Diksha. So we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, for instance, in Anjali says, at the time of initiation, when a devotee fully surrenders under the service of the Lord, Krishna accepts him to be as good as himself. Atma Sama. So when you take initiation, then the Lord accepts them like yourself. So it's a good praise for Diksha. When a devotee's body is thus transformed into spiritual existence, the devotee in that transcendental body renders service to the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is a very elevated praise of the process of Diksha and how you get your spiritual body, etc. However, you can do the same thing through Harinam. Chant the holy name of the Lord, and you get the mercy of the Lord. You get a spiritual body. You go to the spiritual world also. So it's not you have to depend on Diksha process to do that. Harinam can do that independently of Diksha. Okay, so we know this famous quote. There's no in Kali Yuga. There's no alternative than to chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. So this is very famous. All the devotees know that. So ultimately, it's not your Diksha mantra which delivers you. It's Hare Krishna which delivers you. So even though we do have verses like this, Chaitanya Charitamrita also, we shouldn't think that that's the only way you're going to get a spiritual body. Main process is chanting the holy name. And it is also said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is a quote, O best of Brahmas, even without initiation, preliminary purification, or acceptance of the renounced order, one can attain perfection in devotional service simply by chanting the Lord's holy name. So he says, without Diksha. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna once a person is relieved from all the reactions of a sinful life. One can complete the 9 processes of devotional service simply by chanting the holy name. So previously, the definition of Diksha was Divya Gyanam and Papasya Sankshayam, destruction of sin. But destruction of sin, only you chant Hare Krishna once, you destroyed all your sins. So it doesn't require that mantra, the sacred mantra of the Vaishnava. It's just Hare Krishna once chanting will do the same thing. One does not have to undergo initiation or execute the activities required before initiation. One simply has to vibrate the holy name with his lips. Thus, even a man in the lowest class of Chandala can be delivered. So this is through the name, not through mantra or Diksha. So we have 2 processes, the Diksha, where you get the secret mantra, which is not public, and you can chant that to yourself. And through that, you get understand your relationship with the Lord. And this qualifies you for deity worship or archana. And this we call the Pancharatrika Marga. So this is for deity worship. Then in our Sampradaya, we also have chanting of the holy name, which is more prominent, does not require Diksha, but we do have to get someone to get. We do need some knowledge, like we need scripture. So Prabhupada's written all these books for that purpose. This is called the Bhagavata Marga. And this is the Yuga Dharma. So this is the most important process for us. So we have the two processes, of which Nama or the Bhagavata Marga is more important for us. So we got the two processes here like that. Yeah. So we could theoretically just do chanting of the holy name, but we see that usually we do the deity worship also. So that also is particularly useful. So as explained here in Adi Lila, it reduces one's restlessness because our senses are uncontrolled. So deity worship gives us a chance to engage all of our different senses. So in that sense, it's quite useful for us. So we don't reject that process of deity worship and the Diksha process. Of course, we can always ask, well, why do we keep stressing Diksha when the holy name is most important? If we look in Lord Chaitanya's teachings itself, he doesn't stress it. He just says, everybody chant the holy name. That's all he says. Everybody has to take Diksha. He never says that. Of course, we have statements there. You like that, okay, the Diksha establishes your relationship, Krishna reveals, but he never preaches to everybody, go out and take Diksha. He says, simply chant the holy name. That's his main instruction. So then why do we keep stressing Diksha? It's an important, we could say, it's a question which we maybe don't have an answer for, but we also see that Lord Chaitanya accepted Diksha, and people like Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur accepted Diksha. They also accepted Diksha, and Advaitacharya had Diksha. So we have a lot of all these important personalities in Lord Chaitanya's line accepted Diksha. So they did put some importance on it, definitely. We also see that later on, it became emphasized again. And therefore, everyone wants to chase their Diksha line. But then we see with Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati talk, where he decided, we're not going to follow Diksha line at all. So he made a Siksha line instead to take the emphasis off the idea of Diksha. So we get this tendency to emphasize the Diksha, and of course the Lord Chaitanya and his immediate followers had Diksha, so everyone continues in that process. That's there. At the same time, we should not overemphasize it. So maybe one of the reasons why it continued, of course, is because one, most of the acharyas had deities also. So they took initiation and worship deities, and then they passed that on to their disciples, etc. Another, of course, it is a tradition in the Vaishnavas to have Diksha and worship the deities. Therefore, you take the Diksha mantra, etc. So just for tradition's sake alone, you would carry on the process and not disturb that. So there's another reason for it. It became, of course, a little bit, we can say, distorted in one sense, because a lot of these lines became hereditary lines. We call the Goswami lines from Brahmanas. So they became the privileged Diksha Gurus, the Brahmanas, and their son became the Diksha Guru, and their son became the Diksha Guru, like this. So it became hereditary lines. So we can say it became a little exploitative type of thing, because the privilege initiating was you get a lot of disciples and they give you donations. So it's a livelihood for the family to continue. They get to support the family that way through having disciples who give donations or whatever. So it's kind of materialistic, That could be a reason. I'm not saying it is, but that could be a reason also for emphasizing the idea of Diksha lines, etc. Of course, that we can't over criticize that also, because we do find hereditary lines in the Sri Sampradaya also. I think Lord Ramanuja appointed, I think, 21 of his disciples to establish Diksha lines. So they did it. That goes through their family on down for 1,000 years or so. They're continuing these lines through hereditary means, and other sampradayas also may have hereditary lines as well. Madhvas don't. There's some point, some brahmacharis, they get to select brahmacharis from somewhere or other, and they select one of those brahmacharis to be the next head of the sampradaya. So it's not a hereditary line at all. But their initiation is a little bit different again, and quite selective. They don't initiate that many people. So anyway, there's different types of diksha, like that, different methods, etc. So we do have the hereditary lines there, and we have some which were not hereditary lines also coming down diksha lines. But as I said, they kind of re-emphasized that whole idea of diksha again as time went on in the sampradaya. And then when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati talked about that, he started taking the emphasis off again. Okay. So in this way, we got the diksha line. We got another interesting feature here. That's the Raganuga line, which is not actually diksha, but some people kind of equate it like a diksha also, but it's not the diksha because the diksha is getting your diksha mantra. So many of these Goswamis and also the Babajis, they will give diksha, and then they may sometimes give the Raganuga Shiksha with getting your Sarupa as a Manjari, etc., which is actually not the diksha, but it's separate. But because it was kind of related, the same person did it, then there's another emphasis upon the diksha guru, because he also gives you that, your Siddha Rupa, etc., like that. So the two things get connected in that way. So in ISKCON, as I said, when Prabhupada was there, he was the Shiksha Guru and the Diksha Guru. We didn't quite make any distinctions, and he was just the only Guru. But after his disappearance, then we have Diksha Gurus are there, but it's not one Diksha Guru. There's many different Diksha Gurus. And they give the Diksha mantra, they give Shiksha. And then we have Shiksha Gurus who give Shiksha. But the emphasis again is on the Diksha Guru. So he gets all the worship, whatever like that. And he gets the important position, he gets the donations and things like this. So we emphasize again. It cannot be blamed in one sense because this happened in the Gaudiya Math also. Same thing happened. Again, they emphasize the Diksha Guru. So somehow or other, the Diksha Guru gets the prominence, even in the Gaudiya Math, not just in ISKCON. And of course, in the other lines we see in the Goswami Maths, again, the Diksha Guru. Yeah. So even though Chaitanya Charitamrita said, no, they're equal, and you get equal respect in all ways, somehow or other, again, we put the emphasis upon the Diksha. But why? Not because you're getting a Diksha mantra, because we don't really chant that too much. And not everybody that takes a Diksha even does a deity worship. So it's not because you're getting a Diksha mantra and you're progressing through chanting the Diksha mantra or worshiping the deity. Everybody's chanting Hare Krishna, that's the main thing. So it's not because of the actual act of Diksha at all that we're worshiping the Diksha Guru. So why is it? So one reason, of course, is we have all these quotes that say, from the Upanishads, you have to accept the Guru, and we assume that's the Diksha Guru. So therefore, we start worshiping the Diksha Guru because we assume all the quotes are referring to him, but they're not. So again, there's like misplaced, worship of the emphasis on the Diksha Guru because we think the quotes are referring to Diksha Guru when they're not. So that's the position we're in. So as I said, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur tried to take the emphasis off the Diksha by tracing a Shiksha line, not a Diksha line. Yeah. So sometimes we go, oh, wow, how are we going to have a Shiksha Sampradaya? Well, he did it. He traced a Shiksha line, not a Diksha line. So Gorky Shore was not the Diksha disciple of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not the Diksha disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also has some very interesting quotes and his conduct also. So to some disciples, he never gave Diksha. He says, Harinam alone is sufficient for the spiritual progress. So he says, the success of Diksha is inclination for Harinam. Whoever remains fixed in chanting inoffensively should be understood to have undergone Diksha and all of the procedures. You chant Hare Krishna, you already got Diksha. That's what he's saying. So he minimized the importance of Diksha also. The Diksha, those who have initiation or the real Diksha, are inferior to the Harinam Asrata. Those who seriously take shelter of the holy name are superior to those who have taken the Diksha mantra. For those who don't believe that the name and the named, that's Krishna, are non-different, for them, deity worship or Diksha is required. So he puts it in a lesser position. Those who have no faith in the holy name, let them take Diksha. But if you understand that Krishna and his name are non-different, then it's not necessary. So, as I said, in the Gaudiya Math, like ISKCON again, the emphasis went to the Diksha again for some reason. And in ISKCON, we can say it becomes even more prominent as time goes on. So when Prabhupada was there, yeah, he had Diksha, then he had fire ceremonies, but it was quite simple. But over the, now it is how many years, 30, 40 years later, the Diksha ceremony has become quite a complex, elaborate affair. And you get like thousands of people taking Diksha, and you have a huge fire pit, like, meters across, and a huge flame shooting up to the ceiling. And you have them chanting all sorts of mantras and Brahmaslami, this and that, whatever. So it's quite a complicated, elaborate affair now. So this, again, really emphasizes the importance of Diksha. Whereas Siksha, there's no ceremony at all. So then people, oh, what is Siksha? Diksha is like, fire is there, and fire purifies us, like that. So the ISKCON elements are very interesting because the fire sacrifice is not there in the traditional Diksha, where the Goswamis give Diksha, or even Bhakti Siddhanta gave Diksha. The only fire that was there was for the Upanayanam Samskar, where you get the thread for the men. That's where there was a fire. But otherwise, Harinam, there's no fire like that. And even for just getting the mantra, no fire. So it's a very simple affair, even the Diksha, traditionally. They simply get mantra, whisper in their ear, got the mantra, fine. Often they didn't even give a name. So like Srinivasacharya got from Gopal Bhatta, got the mantra, that was it, he didn't even get a name. Narottam got from Lokanath Swami, got a mantra, no name. Just whispered the mantra in his ear, that was it. So very simple, even the Diksha ceremony is very, very simple. But in ISKCON, it's become a very elaborate affair. We have fire sacrifices and vows and whatever. But even that's not the Diksha part of it. That's the first initiation. We call it first initiation. So when you're not, what is not initiation becomes initiation because you're not getting the mantra here. The first, so you're just chanting Hare Krishna, which you already have already. So it's a little bit of a emphasis upon that first initiation. He'll become your Diksha Guru also. Okay. So as I said, traditionally, a very simple ceremony. Haribhav Bhakti Vilas has a very complicated ceremony, but I don't think anybody, even outside the Gaudiya Math or outside the Gaudiya Sampradaya, does such a complicated ceremony for Diksha. It's a very, very complicated ceremony in the Haribhav Bhakti Vilas. So basically, it's giving the mantra, the secret mantra. That's all they do. As we see in the case of Gopal Kumar and Riya Bhagavatamrita, who would simply give the mantra, finished. So this kind of emphasizes the real purpose of Diksha. But when we have all these other elements, then that becomes lost, and we think it's something else completely different. Okay. So Prabhupada has some interesting statements on Diksha. If you understood this Krishna philosophy, and if you decided that you will take Krishna consciousness seriously and preach the philosophy to others, that's your initiation. Simply take Krishna consciousness very seriously. My touch is simply a formality. The chanting of Hare Krishna is our main business. That is real initiation. If you're all following my instruction in the matter, the initiator is already there. Now, the next initiation will be performed at the ceremony officially. Of course, that ceremony has value because the name, the holy name, will be delivered to the student from the discipline's session. It has gotten value. So then Prabhupada equates Harinam as the real Diksha, even though, shastrically it's the mantras, not the Harinam. Why do you believe in rumors that first initiation is not as so important as second? I've already said that it's equally important, but you say rumor. Actually, first initiation is more important. You can go without second initiation. So you don't even need the mantra, which means you actually don't need Diksha because shastrically Diksha is getting the mantra. So you don't even need that mantra. If the first initiation is executed very thoroughly, that is sufficient first initiation stands strong. So even Prabhupada said, okay, not necessary to take the Diksha mantra. So he said, okay, settled. But then he also says, regarding your question, second initiation is real initiation. First initiation is preliminary, just to make them prepared. It's like primary and secondary education. So we got a contrary statement. So this is going to confuse people. We have a very ambiguous, definition of what is Diksha. Diksha is accepting the Supreme Lord, doesn't need any ceremony at all. Diksha is the first word you're Harinam. Diksha is the second, like this. So it becomes very complicated. We got all sorts of different concepts here. Huh? Added to that, then we got something called the Brahman Diksha, which makes a further complication on the whole thing. Because we get the Brahma Gayatri mantra, which is completely separate actually. And we also get that at the same time. So then some people take that with the Diksha, but actually it's completely separate. So if you want to do deity worship, yes, you do need the Vaishnava mantra, but you don't need the Brahma Gayatri mantra. And that was up until Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's son. That's what this. There was no giving of a sacred thread at Vaishnava Diksha. You just get your mantra. That's it. Usually, if you were a Brahmin or Kshatriya or Vaishya, you would get your thread when you were a child. That's all, from your family guru. That's it. So, and you're qualified for, even if you were Sudra, but you got Pancharatric Diksha, you were qualified for deity worship. But because the Smartas were criticizing, they say, oh, these Gaudiya Vaishnavas low class because only Brahmanas should worship the deity, but they're letting Sudra Chandala worship the deity. So the Bhaktisiddhanta said, no. If you get the Pancharatric mantra, Krishna mantra, or Vishnu mantra, whatever, that automatically makes you above the Brahmana. So therefore, one who's got the Diksha, Pancharatric Diksha, Vaishnava Diksha, he can do anything that a Brahman can do. So therefore, he gave everybody the thread when they got the Diksha, just to show that you're superior to the Brahmana. Not that we're trying to become Brahmanas. Okay. So we get all these different, what is initiation? Internal acceptance, which is like Siksha, chanting Hare Krishna with Siksha, first initiation, which is basically Siksha, second initiation, that's which the Vaishnava Diksha is, and probably that's a real initiation also. And then we have Brahman initiation, which is a Vedic type of Diksha. So we got two different types of Diksha. We got a lot of Siksha, and we call the whole thing Diksha in ISKCON. So it gets a little confusing. Okay, so the traditional, I said, was very simple, and it consists of getting the Pancharatric mantra. But then in Pancharatra, they have something called the Pancha Samskar, 5 samskars, purificatory elements. One is getting Vaishnava Tilak. The second is getting branded with the Shankha and Chakra, hot brands of metal stuck on your shoulders. So you get branded. You get a name like Krishnadas or Gauradas or whatever. You get the mantra, which is the most important part. And you get teachings on deity worship. So these are the 5 elements of Vaishnava initiation, Pancha Samskar. So taking that model, we can say that our first initiation, what we call first initiation, is actually giving the name. In the Gaudiya Math, they call it Nam Nam. So you're getting the tilak and you get a name. But the important element is the Krishna mantra, which you get in the second initiation. So that's why Prabhupada says the real initiation is second initiation, because that's where you get the mantra that will qualify you for worshiping the deity, not the first one. So you have to get the Krishna mantra there, and this qualifies you for Harshana. So therefore, that's the real initiation, though we say a second initiation. Added to that, then we get the Vedic initiation with the Gayatri mantra, the Vedic Gayatri mantra and the thread for the men. And along with that, of course, there's the fire sacrifice, the Vedic fire sacrifice. So that is still carried on in the Gaudiya Math after they get their Diksha. Then they have this whole ceremony. They have the whole Upanayana Samskar, even if you're an old man. Everybody's sitting down there, and they go through this whole Upanayana Samskar. They get a danda and all this stuff, even though they're already married and whatever. So basically, it's for a brahmachari, Upanayana Samskar. You get a thread and a mantra, so you can go to the Gurukul and study the Vedas. But they're getting their Diksha late in life, and then they're giving the samskar also later in life. So it's a little bit out of context, but they do that also. But anyway, they go through that whole samskar, and that's where they do their fire sacrifice. Huh? So basically, this was in the Gaudiya Math, so they don't call the first thing initiation at all. It's a very informal ceremony where you just get a name, okay, chant Hare Krishna, or whatever, take get tilak or whatever. So in ISKCON, it comes a little more formalized, and there's vows. You get the beads chanted on by the guru. They do a sacrifice, a fire sacrifice. So that first ceremony is called an initiation, and it becomes a more important affair. In fact, it overshadows the real initiation in ISKCON. You get the first one, you don't get the second, like this. So the whole idea of initiation gets a little bit, placed on this first ceremony. And then in the second, you do get your mantra, and you're qualified for deity worship. Plus, you get the Brahma Gayatri mantra, and the men get the thread. Additionally, Prabhupada gave it to the women, so the women also get the Brahma Gayatri, whereas in Gaudiya Math they didn't. So through all of this, then we have Diksha applying to both ceremonies. We get the more elaborate ceremony, and the vows with the first. So we get an emphasis upon Diksha itself, even though the Diksha is only that little part in the second where you get the mantra, but then the whole two ceremonies are there, etc. So the Diksha gets emphasized, and consequently the Diksha Guru gets more emphasis because of this. Okay. Yeah. So therefore we call it Harinam Diksha, or whatever like that, even though Harinam does not need Diksha. So, of course, we can say, well, just follow what Srila Prabhupada did. So we do the same thing. So, yeah, you can do that. But then, of course, we don't do everything Prabhupada did because we cannot imitate also. So originally, after Prabhupada's disappearance, then everybody, okay, Prabhupada appointed some Diksha gurus. So then they acted like Srila Prabhupada. They sat on big Vyasasana and whatever. But then later on, they thought, well, that's not proper, So then they cut down the size of the Vyasasanas because you can't exactly imitate like that. So Prabhupada did many things, but should we follow exactly like he did, or can we alter? No. So that's a big question. It's controversial. How much we can alter, how much we have to keep the same, whatever. It's also, of course, according to our own qualification, what we are qualified to do. But in any case, that the Diksha Guru has become very, very prominent. Prabhupada himself, we see, he's sometimes say, okay, not really necessary, just internally you accept that's Diksha, whatever like that, or the first initiation is Diksha, Harinam is more important than the deity mantras, etc. So, but nevertheless, somehow or other, the idea of Diksha Guru has become very, very prominent. Well, what's wrong with that? One, of course, is that a lot of the work of advancing, getting a devotee to advance is done by another person who's actually a Siksha Guru. But then he doesn't get any credit for that. And all the credit goes to the Diksha Guru, who comes once a year or once every 5 years. So then the devotees are thinking, well, what's this? Somebody else is getting the credit, but they're not doing any of the work. They just got the title of being the Diksha Guru, getting all the worship. So then, and of course, the idea is Siksha and Diksha should be equally respected, but then they're not doing that. They're giving more respect to the Diksha Guru, in spite of the fact that his work is much less. And Siksha, of course, is the major factor for us, rather than the Diksha, because that's related to deity worship. But we're chanting Hare Krishna is the main element that does need the Siksha to go along with it. So therefore, we have to give credit to the Siksha Gurus. And of course, another reason of why the Diksha, the prominence of the Diksha Guru is a little bit, let's say, dangerous, is that it eclipses the position of Srila Prabhupada, and that the worship of the Diksha Guru becomes more elaborate than the worship of Srila Prabhupada, who's the founder Acharya. So this is another problem, because each disciple will worship their Diksha Guru, and we get groups of people worshiping their Diksha Guru, and then we get little groups of people who have different loyalties. And then we get all sorts of, disunity with the ISKCON because of that. Rather than being all under Srila Prabhupada, we have everybody separate with their own Diksha Guru, who becomes like the founder of their own little movement. So this becomes another problem, where we get splinter groups because of devotion to Diksha Gurus, like that. So we have the main society Prabhupada set up with, management, etc. system, but then we have the Diksha Guru with their disciples operating with another managerial system. So we got a competition there of loyalties between loyalty to ISKCON and loyalty to Diksha Guru. So that can be a problem of, causing disunity in ISKCON. So of course the GBCs recognize some of the problem, and there's been several attempts to try to correct that. So statements have been made like this one. ISKCON members shall be trained to place their faith, trust, and allegiance first and foremost in the founder Acharya, who is the preeminent Shiksha Guru for every member of ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada is to be worshipped through his words, his murti, his picture, and his devotees. We have worship of the Diksha Gurus in ISKCON. We got worship of the Shiksha Gurus in ISKCON, which is usually less than the Diksha Guru. And we have worship of Srila Prabhupada, who's the founder Acharya, and has written all the essential works for us. So we should give prominence to that. But then obviously the worship of the Diksha Guru becomes more prominent in many cases. So therefore we have all members of ISKCON for all generations encouraged to seek shelter of Srila Prabhupada. All members of ISKCON are entitled and encouraged to have a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada through his books, teaching, service, and his ISKCON society. So statement was made in 2013. So some people will ask the question, well, yeah, okay, we have to worship Shiksha Gurus. There could be many Shiksha Gurus and Diksha Guru, and we have to worship Srila Prabhupada. Well, how can I worship so many people? Too much. But we have this statement in Krishna Bhajanamrita: the father is like a guru, his older and younger brothers are also gurus, and the father of one's father is the grandfather or a great relative or the greater sex, also a guru, but his worship should be double that of the father. So even in a family, we don't just worship one person, we worship many persons, and then we give more prominence to the senior person. So there's many worships there, even in, say, material world. So that could also take place in spiritual life. We can worship so many different devotees, and then we can also worship Srila Prabhupada as like the grandfather guru, and give him even more prominent respect. Yeah. So we do have a sampradaya, and we are tracing a Shiksha sampradaya, not a Diksha sampradaya. So the Diksha goes through the person who gives the deity mantra. That we trace it that way. Shiksha, it is the giving the teachings. Of course, both are got Shakti, and the mantra itself is not different from Krishna, but the teachings also are not different from Krishna. And we saw the definition of Diksha was it transmits Divya Gyanam, or transcendental knowledge, and destroys sins. Teachings do the same thing. We hear Bhagavatam from a devotee that we get transcendental knowledge. It can't be material knowledge we're getting. So we get Divya Gyanam through Shiksha, and that destroys our sin also. We get Divya Gyanam through Hare Krishna, because Hare Krishna is not different from Krishna, and it also destroys our sins. So there's many ways in which you can get transcendental knowledge and destroy the sins. So it's not just the Diksha that does that. It's pervasive throughout all of bhakti and carried on by the devotees. Yeah. So where is that spiritual Shakti coming from? Is it through the ceremonies? But then Prabhupada said, well, that's just a formality. He says, so it couldn't be actually through the ceremony. Is it through the fire sacrifice? So many devotees think, yeah, the fire burns up all your karmas and things like that. Yeah. But that I say that's a recent addition. It wasn't even there before. Is it getting a spiritual name? Yeah, okay, names are good, but then many people didn't get names. Gopal Kumar didn't get a name. Srinivasacharya didn't get a name. Narottam didn't get a name. So it's part of the Pancha Samskar, but not really necessary. Even Lord Chaitanya didn't get a name. Yeah. So is it through the beads? Guru chants on the beads and gives it to you. But that also is not part of it's not even part of the Pancha Samskar. It's something to do with Hare Krishna more than initiation as such. Of course, it's powerful because it's part of the name, but it's not part of the Diksha process as such. Is it through the Diksha mantra? Well, yes, because the Diksha mantra is powerful, but Harinam is more powerful. Yeah. So through Hare Krishna mantra, definitely. Is it through teachings? Yes. Is it through personal presence? Yes. All devotees have some potency of Shakti, of Bhakti, that they can give mercy. Any devotee who's serious has that Shakti. So we have many sources from to getting the transmitting Bhakti. We have the name, we have the mantra, we have the Siksha Guru, we have the Diksha Guru, we have other devotees, we have the teachings, many, many ways in which we're encouraged, our Bhakti is encouraged. So how does this relate to Srila Prabhupada, who's the founder? Well, Srila Prabhupada is the one that founded the movement. He gave us all the initial teachings. He introduced Harinam to everybody, and he's established the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And of course, he's also given the Diksha mantra, which is carried on by the Diksha Guru. So he's giving all the different things that we have, actually. So then the Shakti is actually coming through him. So he's the founder of all the elements of Siksha and Diksha that we have. But then somehow we may overemphasize the importance of the Diksha Guru, the personal Diksha Guru at the present time. That will overshadow, even though he's actually the source of all of that. So somehow we do have to balance this all out. Okay. So how do we get Prabhupada back in the center? How do we emphasize? So this is a problem that we have to work on. There's many ways in which we could do that. GBC has made some statements like that. In spite of that, and we also have the disciple force. Yeah. And even in spite of that, they still go back and worship the Diksha Guru. So it's like some sort of syndrome, You get the statements there, but then they do something completely opposite. So it's a little bit of a problem. So we may have to think more seriously on how to, tackle the problem. Maybe we have to change the whole ceremony. Maybe we have to make the Siksha Gurus have a big ceremony for them instead. That's seriously, people are thinking like that, proposing that, as a resolution even. Okay? So there's various things we can do. We have to think about that, but somehow or other we have to also emphasize the role of Srila Prabhupada in all this. Okay, so basically that's what I wanted to say. I don't know anything here. Okay, so somehow we do have to put Prabhupada at the center, but we have to think about how to do that. But if we have a little knowledge of what the Diksha process is and what Siksha is and how they're interrelated, this can help us get a clear mind and understand the position of Siksha and Diksha. Okay, any question?
So like I heard most of the people saying like unless you get the first initiation, your spiritual life is gone. You cannot cross the Anartha Nivritti stage and forget about Raganuga Bhakti itself. Yeah. So, but we know Bhakti is like independent of all these things. Yeah. So it's Raganuga Bhakti, like, is it dependent on first initiation or second initiation?
Well, as I explained here, actually, first initiation really didn't exist. That's something that ISKCON talks about. Even the Gaudiya Math, they don't call that what we call first initiation at all. It's just an informal introduction to Bhakti. That's all it is. So how can that be necessary, in one sense? So it's a little bit unfounded, such a, statement or whatever. I don't know who's making it, but it's a little bit. But on the other hand, as Prabhupada says, chanting the holy name itself is the most important element. So anything that can help us chant better, that's very important for us. So in that sense, if the first initiation helps you do that, okay, fine, that's good.
So, since you're emphasizing Srila Prabhupada and you're saying all the other things like his medium.
Yeah.
My question is, what is Ritvikism and how does this differ?
Okay, yeah. So the Ritiks say that actually the Diksha should be given by Srila Prabhupada himself. Whereas we're saying that no, we have Diksha Gurus who give the mantra. They're saying Prabhupada should give the mantra. So it doesn't go through anybody else. Yeah. So that's one solution to the problem where Prabhupada gets all the worship because there's no other Diksha Guru there. So even if it's Diksha, not Siksha, it's Prabhupada's the center because he's a Diksha Guru. Theoretically, it works. But then he gives the mantra. How does he give the mantra? Tape recording. So they hear a tape recording. But then the problem with that is, did Prabhupada agree to give the person? So did he interview him? Did he approve him? No. So there's a little bit of a problem there. He's giving Diksha, but he's not approving anything. The temple president is saying, okay, get the tape of Srila Prabhupada and listen to it, and you got the mantra. Like that. So, it's a little bit artificial. And it's assuming that Prabhupada is accepting everybody through somebody else. The other point is, yes, it does reduce the idea of other people replacing Srila Prabhupada theoretically, but actually in practice, then still, a lot of people still depend upon another person. So then, even we say, okay, Prabhupada Diksha Guru, but then another person, like the temple president, becomes the authority for them. And then they worship him like Prabhupada also. Tendency to worship somebody who's always there, so then they worship the next person there, and they put him in the place of the Diksha Guru, even though he didn't give the Diksha. So, it's like, it doesn't solve the problem also in many ways. So maybe half solves the problem, but doesn't solve the problem completely. And the other point, of course, is it's not done anywhere previously in history that you get Diksha through tape recording down for 20 generations or something like that.
So just a follow-up question. So to keep Prabhupada in the center, we are currently in second generation from Prabhupada.
Yeah.
Because a person would be having a Diksha Guru and he would be the disciple of Prabhupada.
Yeah.
So Prabhupada is still in the picture because he was just 40 years before.
And when you get 3 generations, 4 generations, it's quite distant.
There is a huge chance that Prabhupada might be out of the movement. He himself might be out of the movement. And then the particular Diksha Guru, or each Diksha Guru might, as you said, can take their disciples and go away.
Yeah.
And it has happened in some cases in
Yeah.
other places also. So to prevent that, to keep Prabhupada in the center, is there any possibility that Prabhupada can be made given not the first initiation, but there should be a ceremony making him accept as the primary Guru, and then the second initiation can be the Diksha Guru? Because there's a huge chance this might happen in the future.
Yeah, of course, as I said, there's many different things we could do. Different proposals are there. Nobody's proposed that yet, but it could be a thing. Ceremony with the primary Siksha Guru, ceremony for that. Well, there is a proposal like that we do have something called Prabhupada Asraya. Yeah, so something like that, but make more ceremonial thing in which you officially accept Prabhupada as your ultimate shelter, like that. That's some proposal that people make also.
So the people could not, if Prabhupada is still there.
Yeah. As you said, yes, as generations go on, and then we get a bigger movement, and we get more Diksha Gurus. Now we got maybe 60 Diksha Gurus. 3 generations, we may have 1,000. So that's quite a lot of Diksha Gurus. And if they all have their independent groups, this is very difficult to manage. So, we do have to come to some solution on that, definitely. What's that? How is it
that this sugar is getting more credit, extra credit?
In other groups.
Why he gets more extra credit? Well, that's the mystery. No, we don't know. Yeah, but he's often there. Comes once a year or once every 3 years.
For example, like new gurus.
Yeah.
I told this Swami and my guru had Swami.
Yeah.
And then later Jananda Maharaj now.
Yeah.
So for us, like, okay, they are the only gurus, like, okay, we are not exposed too much to many
True.
gurus. Yeah, so it depends on the exposure, right?
Yeah, also. Yeah.
Maybe due to attractive ceremonies also. Like,
Yeah. So that's one of the main things. Maybe the ceremony involved with the Diksha emphasizes Diksha.
Isn't also the seniority?
Huh?
Isn't also the seniority because the direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada and
Yeah.
they've been in the movement longer.
Yeah.
They've associated with Prabhupada.
Yeah.
They've had direct teachings with Prabhupada. So seniority, isn't it? Like,
True, but then we have many seniors who are not Diksha Gurus that are given Shiksha, but then they don't get the respect. But they should, because they're also given Shiksha. They're also senior.
I mean, it's just my opinion. I think it's Prabhupada disciples who are not giving Diksha, but they're also getting, although they're giving Shiksha, they're also getting the same respect as a sannyasi.
Well, some people claim they're not.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Uh, so like what happened? What 40 years back was Srila Prabhupada, he rejuvenated the movement, isn't it? Like Gaudiya Vaishnavism was becoming almost coming to a halt, and he rejuvenated the entire thing, and he reinterpreted all the even the commentaries of the acharyas. He reinterpreted according to the time, place, and circumstance, right? If my understanding is correct. So 40 years later or 50 years later, so would there be a need for somebody to actually rejuvenate the teachings and reinterpret? Even there needs to be a commentary on Prabhupada's commentary and saying that this is what is relevant to that time, place, and circumstance. So would that be like a second Prabhupada? I'm just not a second Prabhupada. Would there be like a prominent acharya at that time, like 50 years?
Well, we can't predict. There may or may not
Yeah,
be when it would come or that. If it comes, then it has to be by, let's say, universal acclaim, so to speak. Somebody could claim I'm the next Prabhupada or whatever, but other people. Yeah.
Rejuvenating the teaching.
Yeah, so it would have to be a spontaneous.
Spontaneous. Yeah. Something like that.
So definitely, time, especially nowadays, time is such that everything keeps changing very, very quickly in the modern world. In fact, the society now is quite different from what 10 years ago, even what to speak of 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It's completely different. The people are different. The communication mode is different. Their values are different. Everything's quite different. So obviously, if you don't change and communicate with the present people, you're not going to have followers among them. So you do have to adapt to the present people. At the same time, we cannot not change anything. We do have to have a conservative thing. We can't change everything just to make it nice for the modern people, whatever. Otherwise, there's no more teachings left. So we do have some essential things we can never change. With that, then we can also, there's ways of communicating and whatever, so we can change some things, but we can't change the essential teachings or whatever like that. So that we have to decide what we cannot change. And then we can, deal with the present, communications or whatever like that. So both things are required. Don't change some things and change other things according to the society.
My book or the law book for the next 10,000 years.
Yeah.
And he said, don't change anything.
Yeah. But even in the books, then we do have to see what are the essential things and which are some things are flexible also.
The principle should be remaining.
So that's what we have to decide. What are the principles that you don't change? Yeah.
There are some books changed after Srila Prabhupada.
But then you have to see, are those changes philosophically radically changing the philosophy or not, or whether it's just grammatical changes or whatever. You have to see that also.
Talked about three issues here. One is Prabhupada being the preeminent Siksha Guru, who's one. We have a Diksha Guru who's one, but Siksha Gurus could be many. So for a person who, how does one worship a Siksha Guru considering there could be many? There could be a senior devotee, there could be a senior devotee. So what would that look like in terms of giving provenance?
Well, of course, one is we in Krishna Bhajanamrita, this is also, we worship. And we worship like the Supreme Lord, the Diksha and the Shiksha Guru. But he also says they also get the worship according to their level of advancement. So the one who is in higher advancement, he gets the more worship. So therefore, and we have many Shiksha Gurus or whatever. So, but according to their advancement, then we give more prominence to the worship of the more advanced person. But the Shiksha Guru may be more advanced than the Diksha Guru. So then, of course, then you would worship him more than the Diksha Guru.
Something is around focused around one person from whom we are connected in getting the teachings. So what happens in a situation where in ISKCON, the first initiation is from one guru, and then he departs, and then takes second initiation from another guru. So in terms of worship, deity worship, are both equally important in terms of pranam mantra, or one takes precedence over the other?
Well, on one hand, the second is the actual Diksha for worshiping the deity. So you could say it that way. But then Prabhupada said, well, first initiation more important. Because Harinam is more important for us. So in terms of the inspiration, maybe the one who gave first, like some devotees got first from Prabhupada, and then he passed away, so they had to get second from somebody else. Obviously, they're going to take Prabhupada as their prominent guru, in spite of the fact that they didn't get the Diksha mantra from him. And so, it's up to the individual to choose which is more prominent.
I just threw the Ramanuja 13.
13 Shiksha gurus.
So why yet?
Well, for different subject matters. So one would teach, logic, one would teach this, one would teach that. So he had different Shiksha gurus, and he gave them all respect for their particular ones, Tamil Vedas or whatever, like that. So they all have different specialities.
Most of the time, Diksha Guru also acts as a Shiksha Guru.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that they are not always available. I mean, we don't have exposure to.
Yeah, some people don't, some people do. Yeah. So of course, now that we do have communications, even though the Diksha Guru doesn't come every year or whatever, once a year or a few days or whatever, at least you can communicate with him. But then the other problem is that many Diksha Gurus have thousands of disciples, and if each disciple writes a letter twice a year, you end up with 2,000 letters a year. And then how is he going to answer all 2,000 letters? That means he has had to write 6 or 8 letters a day like that, and probably he's not going to do that. So in that sense, he may not get the communication even if they have only 10 disciples, fine. But if they got 2,000, 3,000, which is not uncommon, So
they communicate through mentors, like appointed by the.
Yeah. So they become like Shiksha gurus even.
Where you mentioned about Krishna mantra for second meditation, but we get only Brahma guy.
No.
We get many mantras.
But in ISKCON, is it standard mantras, or does each person get
It
different?
is
weighting?
standard. Of course, some gurus give an extra mantra or something like that, but it's hard to figure out because it's secret. So but that's there even in the traditional lines. We don't know what they're giving, what the Nityananda Vamsa gives, or what the Gadadhar line is giving. They're not going to reveal their mantras to you. Advaita line gives slightly different, so they all give slightly different, but essentially it's Krishna mantra and Gauranga mantra, but there's some variations there also.
So once we have taken birth in Diksha, and we have your Diksha Guru who has helped you to come to that point, just everything changes now. You just give preference to your Diksha Guru.
Well, that's what I was saying, but that's what generally happens. But
is that right?
no.
The devotee, protection,
Yeah.
who has brought you all the way there.
Yeah.
Ignore their teachings now and just say, you have to follow my
Yeah.
master.
Yeah, no, so no, that's what I was saying. We put overemphasis on the Diksha Guru at the expense of everybody else. So that actually is not proper, because many people are doing that work of Shiksha, etc. But then if you just ignore them, then that's ingratitude.
Point of view.
Yeah.
That is a big offense.
Well, it could be, depending on how you ignore them. I'm not going to listen to you anymore.
Zoom.
Where's the questions?
Teachings of the Siksha Guru and Diksha Guru should be different.
The philosophical teaching should be the same generally. Yeah. Oh, so like within if before we had organized movements, then they had individual just groups, and it was kind of loosely organized. So it was a little difficult to figure out who's bona fide and who's not bona fide. So therefore, if you take a Shiksha Guru, the rule was you should take it to the Shiksha Guru or the Diksha Guru and ask him, okay, is this bona fide or not? Is the right teaching like that? Now that we got a movement like this, we do have a lot of communications and things like that, and we have all the books, so it's not such a problem. Basically, we have all the same philosophy because we have the same books for Prabhupada, so it's not a problem.
Maharaj,
question was, a lot of us have deities at home and we are worshipping them to the best of our ability, but we don't have Diksha.
Yeah,
So how?
it's
what is that?
non-pancharatric deity
Yeah.
worship.
Just not right.
Well, yeah, of course, from Lord Chaitanya's point of view, I am Kevalam, so we can take his mercy and then do that worship to the best of our ability without going through the Pancharatric process. But if you want to follow Pancharatric, then you should take the Diksha, take the mantras, etc. What was the other question? Oh, in Satya and other yogas, meditation, yoga, and deity worship are performed by Shakti of the Lord? Who's the Shakti? Anyway, in miserable Kali Yuga, full of sin, the Lord himself performs the function. Okay. Can you please tell what the Shakti mean? Oh, well, anyway, we do have the Yuga avatars in the other yugas. Maybe that's what he means by the Shakti. But they are Yuga avatars who are expansions from the Manvantara avatar. So they're expansion of expansions, basically like that. So in our particular Kali Yuga, different from other Kali Yugas, where it's a Shaktavesh avatar, who's actually a Jiva, not even the Supreme Lord, who does the thing. We have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is not an expansion of a Shaktavesh or of a Manvantara avatar. He is actually not different from Krishna. So he's in a special category, Swami Bhagavan himself in another form with a golden hue. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's not a Shakti or anything, or an Amsa of an Amsa. I think that's what it means. Is that the one question? What's the difference between second initiation and Brahman initiation? As we say, second initiation means Brahman initiation is gone. Okay, yeah. So there's a little confusion here. We call it Brahman initiation, we call it secular initiation, we call it Diksha or Vaishnava initiation. We've got many names for it. Technically, the Brahman initiation is a separate ceremony, which is previously carried out separately afterwards. Because you are a Vaishnava with the Vaishnava mantra, therefore, you're greater than the Brahmana, so therefore we'll give you the Brahmana Gayatri mantra. That's all. So it's like a separate thing. In ISKCON, we merge the two things together to get all the mantras at once, and we don't have a separate ceremony for it at all. But still, unless you get the Vaishnava mantras, you still cannot worship the deity. So the Diksha itself is not the Brahma Gayatri, it's the other mantras. And even if you don't have the Brahma Gayatri, you can worship the deity, even if you come from a low family or whatever, as long as you got the Vaishnava mantra. So it's a secondary mantra, just to preach to the smarters, so to speak. The question will come, of course, we don't have many smarters in New Zealand, so it doesn't really matter. So you wouldn't need the Brahma Gayatri anyway, because there's nobody to criticize you for not being a Brahmana when you're doing the deity worship. Is that the only question? Yep. Okay.
Thank you so much. When you take initiation, they do a test, online test. In the online test, they mentioned you still have to take Prabhupada as your original guru.
Okay.
You have to keep in touch with the original guru by having reading his books.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fine. That's good. So that's a way of emphasizing Srila Prabhupada. If they do that, fine. Yeah.
So that's everybody is saying different things. So
Oh.
Prabhupada is still the original guru, and we still need to keep in touch with the original.
Yeah, so we should do that. As I say, we have to put an emphasis on Srila Prabhupada because in the future we have so many gurus and then so many loyalties. So we do have to have original founder there, which is something like in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. They have different lines or whatever, but they maintain the unity because they always think of Ramanujacharya as the shelter of everybody. With that, and they put great emphasis upon him, in spite of the fact that they do have individual gurus. And we see that the worship of the individual gurus never eclipses the Ramanujacharya. It never does, it never supersedes his position. So they do some worship, but it's always a very quiet, humble type of worship that they do. Okay, fine.
It is difficult for us to understand. So should we aspire to take initiation? Like if someone is chanting 16 round, they're following everything, they have Siksha Guru. Should they-
Well, it depends on what you mean by initiation, you see, because it's a little complicated because the first one technically is not initiation. The second one is Diksha mantra, but the first one is more important for us because we take seriously, chanting Hare Krishna, etc. So like that. So in that sense, okay.
First one. I was
Yeah,
referring-
yeah.
First one I was referring. Harinam.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but again, it's not that it's necessary in the sense that if you don't do it, your whole life is wasted or whatever like that. Because Harinam is not dependent on any sort of ceremony or diksha at all. And as Prabhupada said, you accept internally, then that's the real initiation. So, but some people do have some dependence on externals, so therefore they do it. But then the counter to that is that when they do that, then they take that diksha gurus to everything, and then they forget everybody else. So that's the negative aspect of it.
Someone is not born in Brahmin family to do deity worship. He has to take Diksha. If someone is born in Brahmin family and have got the thread, and
That doesn't qualify him to do the deity worship. Pancharatrik, you need the diksha mantras, the Vaishnava diksha mantras. You may be qualified for Shiva mantras or something like that from your, you get some initiation from a Shiva guru. Okay, you can do that. But if you want to worship the Krishna deity in our Sampradaya, then you have to have the Pancharatrik diksha. And even if you don't have the Brahman thread, you don't have that. Even that, if you got the mantra, you're entitled to the worship.
About the person that
Mhm.
if you look at Prabhupada's life, how he met Amitabh and living in detention for 10 years.
10
So
years,
he was
yeah.
very serious in his Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, yeah.
Yet he still got initiation from Amitabh. Could you please explain
Or why he took initiation, or why it took 10 years, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, did he have to take initiation because he's already taken shelter from his neck?
Yeah, and of course he accepts Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in his heart. So that's why in that letter he's writing that when you accept Krishna consciousness seriously, that's a real initiation. And the ceremony is only formality, he says. So in that sense, okay, he took after 10 years because that was kind of expected. So that was the formality aspect. But immediately he met him, he had this realization that he's my guru. So, maybe we could say that's his esoteric initiation or something like that. That's where he established his relationship with Guru.
Maharaj, like most of the Guru Maharaj now getting quite old. Like after 10 years, 15 years, what is the scenario in the ISKCON to give Diksha to the the new generation, new
Oh,
disciples?
well, we always have a new gurus being made. So disciples of the present guru, then they become gurus, and they start initiation or whatever, or shiksha or whatever. So we have generation after generation continuing the process. Obviously, nobody lasts forever. So we have new gurus coming up.
But they're not like from Prabhupada,
No, there'll be second, third, fourth generation as time goes on. Inevitably. Yeah.
My question was that a devotee is in ISKCON and practicing, his devotional life, and sometimes they experience maybe the person they wanted to take initiation leaves the body, or somehow if they don't get to take initiation at all, can they go back to Godhead?
Well, as Lord Chaitanya says, Harinam eva kevalam. Harinam is what delivers you. It doesn't depend on anything. So technically, no.
I just think that the life wasn't wasted. That's a good news, but sometimes people don't. Sometimes they have a misfortune and actually end up with that initiation.
Yeah, well, yeah. So even so, Krishna has great mercy on everybody who's chanting. So it's not that the mercy comes through initiation; it comes through the chanting process, and of course, devotees' mercy also. But it doesn't really depend on initiation as such. Pancharatrically, of course, they say, okay, if you don't get initiation, your life is wasted or whatever like that. But as for Harinam, Lord Chaitanya says, your life is wasted if you don't chant Hare Krishna. It's not Pancharatric, that's all, if you don't know the mantras. Well, it's not according to Pantratic Vidi, that's all. But we can say, of course, Lord Chaitanya is very merciful, so he may make exceptions for us.
And other than the daily worship, is there any other reason for having the
Well, that's the main reason, as Jiva Goswami says, for rich householders. So and of course it engages you. It gives you a nice engagement for all your senses and whatever, and it gives you opportunity to spend up your money. You're just chanting Hare Krishna, you can't spend your money. Deity worship, then you have to make offerings and you go to Vrindavan and buy some deity outfits and ornaments and do all this, and make arrangements, buy a simasthan and all this. So you can spend up all your money then.
Question, change, like cope up with the new change. So when you say like we need to make sure that we,
Yeah, you have to adapt to the times.
Yeah. How we make sure that we are not adapting something that is not good for the dharma. Like for the long term, we can see that this is not good. In the short term, it's quite hard to analyze those kinds of things.
So that's why we have to determine which are the basic things we never change. Yeah. And then the other things we can change, just like details, but the essential things we don't change. So that we have to decide all the time and keep that as a constant. Then the movement remains the movement. Otherwise, if we keep changing all the principles and whatever, it's no longer the same movement as something else.
Maharaj, I got one question. In ISKCON, we talked about disciplic succession all the time. Very important.
Yeah.
But I found it came to know, for example, I'm from Maharashtra. And there are so many sampradayas like Eknath and Ramdev, Sant Tukaram. They had gurus, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
So, and then when they do the parikrama, the Pandharpur, they're all following only one, like say Naneshwar or someone. How does it fit? There is no disciplic succession. Somewhere I documented in the book.
Yeah. Well, then it's a little bit, maybe some of them can trace back, like I think some of the movements like the Ramanandis, they will trace their lineage back to Ramanujacharya somehow, but I don't know if everybody, Ramanujas may not accept that. So some of them will try to get some sort of authority by, grafting themselves onto another movement. Some just say, okay, we're independent, but that's a little bit questionable because, you can't just arise like that. You should have some sort of line, traditional line of, parampara, etc. So better we accept things which are in a bona fide parampara. We have 4 Vaishnava paramparas, the Madhvas and the Sris and the Nabhaktas and the Vallabhas like that. So those are the main ones. And the others are like a little bit question mark.
Regional practices. Regional practices.
Yeah. And of course, if we examine their philosophy, I don't know, some of them may tend towards impersonalism sometimes and this and that, because, that Mayavad philosophy and impersonalism influences a lot of these different groups. So it may have some mixture in there also, that philosophy. Yeah. Whereas if you take the pure 4 Sampradayas, they're definitely, there's no influence of Mayavad philosophy there.
And one question again, in the same area. Like Sant Tukaram Maharaj was initiated in a dream by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah, Tukaram, yeah. But I haven't seen his name anywhere in the disciplic succession.
Oh, okay.
In the books gone.
Yeah.
So how's that?
I think his name was mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that he met Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah.
So there is some connection there. Of course, maybe he didn't take initiation or this or that. He just influenced or got inspiration from him. So therefore, he won't be traced within our sampradaya as such. But if he met Lord Chaitanya, fine, then maybe the influence is there. So there's a connection, which there's a Siksha connection. Okay. Hare Krishna.